what is happening, everybody? And welcome to our very first premiere show of Draft Room Discussions. And happy Super Bowl weekend, even though maybe we're not so crazy about the teams that are in it.
Hey, man, listen, my wife was born in Kansas City, as were my kids. So you know what? I got to represent. So I have family in it. I have some buy-in.
I have one of my favorite Huskies in it, so that's my only saving grace in it all. Otherwise, I'm there for the beer.
I think I'm there for the bourbon and tequila because like it's a thing in my house for the Super Bowl. I don't know. My team hasn't made it in like forever, so you know what? It's a thing now, I guess. Tequila and bourbon. I don't know what to tell you.
Facts. I'm just waiting for Reed to put out the list of the beers that I need to obtain tomorrow to enjoy.
Yes, I should come up with a drink list. Just to dull the pain.
Look, the Eagles are in it, so I'm gonna have to go with Arrogant Bastard. I'm just saying. A good IPA, gotta go with Arrogant Bastard. No, love you guys. Look, I grew up in Philly. Like I love you guys, but Arrogant Bastard.
It fits. Like I put in the description, this is just a couple of, it's a group of us that talk football probably way more than we probably should every single day. And we decided to join some forces and talk about the draft. Just because it is one of our passions, and it's probably better than talking about our favorite football team at this point. But we're going to start off because this is one of the hottest subjects of this draft. And just because we do have some outstanding, this has got to be one of the deepest running back classes that we've seen in a while. Absolutely. And we, besides this absolute superstar that we have that has emerged out of it, we are going to start off with actually talking about the draft class for the running backs. And we'll just start with, I think our consensus is that Genty is RB1. Does anybody have an argument against that at this point?
No.
Yeah.
I can't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm off base. I can't think of a recent draft class that probably since I've maybe started watching football where he wouldn't be RB1.
I don't know about that. Like, some of that's hindsight's 2020, right? Like we're looking at it as who would be there. And look, when Saquon came out, when Zeke came out, like they were consensus by far number one guys. Now, is Gianti different? Yes. But to say that he might be, I don't know, because look, we know what Zeke did in college, right? Mm-hmm. I think, he basically carried the Buckeyes to a championship. Go Buckeyes. But when he came out, he was the next thing, right? Everybody thought he was the generational running back. So I don't know if you can say he would be in any class, but he would definitely be in the discussion of top 2 or 3 for sure in any class.
I just look at what he's able to do and his balance and his power, his balance, being able to stay up when he's going head on with people and just being able to bounce right off them and not lose his balance at all. It seems like he's not even wobbling at all. He just goes like nothing happened. And then his speed, he has that breakaway speed. It just seems like he's just the whole package, really, when you're looking at a running back and what a running back can do. He's even a really good blocker, which I know Zeke was too, as I'm just trying to think, and maybe you're right. There is a little bit of recency bias to it, probably. But I have a hard time looking back and thinking okay, who did I rate higher than this guy coming out of college? And it's hard to really find that.
Yeah, I was a bit bullish on him at first, just because of the level of competition. That you're gonna hear me say that a couple of times in this podcast. But level of competition for me, that's like a big thing. Being in the Mountain West. But to see what he did against Penn State, they're loading the box with 8 guys and they're hitting him and he's just churning it out. and you know that's the only thing that they can do, and he was still doing it. That obviously elevates him as running back 1 for me for this draft class for sure.
I agree with that, and not only what he did against Penn State, but he also did it against Oregon.
Yep.
And in adding to everything that you guys said, I see this natural ability. It's almost like there's this football running back IQ that he knows the move to make. It's absolutely natural to him, and it's just something I really probably haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, I think he's done enough to prove that he's legitimate number 1 in this class.
Yeah, for sure.
I still have Saquon Barkley ahead of him. Like if we're looking at comparatively with all different classes, I got Barkley comfortably ahead of him. But that's not to take anything away from the amazing things that he accomplished. And the examples that you gave is just showing that it's not fool's gold. He did this against real defenses who were honed in on him. I mean, they knew it was coming, and it still worked. And it wasn't because of phenomenal blocking up front. That's something I talk about all the time. Is best running back doesn't really matter. It's the best offensive line. Well, he's kind of the exception to that rule up until now. We'll see how that translates to the NFL. But I don't see any circumstance where this guy's a bust.
Yeah. And I agree with that point you just made, that he was what they had to hone in on. They didn't have that passing game. They didn't. I mean, every single time he was right there on that defensive coordinator's board. And how are we going to stop him? They didn't have to worry about some other factors, really.
The old Bill Belichick have taken away the best player, but unfortunately, it's just really difficult to take away a player of that caliber.
Correct.
So I think we're getting into the next ones is where it's going to be some
real quick. Let me just say real quick, because you're talking running backs right now, and you're talking about stopping them. Super Bowl. Yes, stop Barkley. Okay, that's it.
Oh,
yes.
No,
that's how you're going to stop.
I'm just saying we're talking running backs and stopping them and all of that. Let's say that's what Kansas City should do. Okay, back to the draft.
No lies told. No lies told. Okay, so let's go around, and who do you have? I mean, because we've kind of talked about that this is more like we know who RB1 is now. We more likely, instead of having RB2, 3, 4, we have RB2A, 2B, 2C. Who do you guys have going next? Tyler, why don't you tell us who do you have at number 2?
I think it's going to be Hampton. You know, he reminds me of Jahmyr Gibbs so much. He's a wonderful pass blocker, and he always wants to get to the outside, and he has that explosive speed. He's not afraid to take on a linebacker or safety in there, and he just done it over and over and over again. And again, then there's another running back that you said that's either 2B or 2C that does the same exact thing here. But I think it is Hampton in this case, and I think a team is going to get him in the first round eventually.
Dan, what are you saying?
I'm actually in agreement on Hampton. I think Hampton, and I'm going to use this in a really weird way. I think he's kind of like Gianti Light, right? Like his contact balance is good. The guy's good receiver. I think he kind of is what you want out of a running back in this era of football. Much like Reed said, right? Like he kind of reminds you of a certain style of player, right? He named one, but there's certain style of players that are like that. And I think Hampton kind of fits that. And look, if this year wasn't as deep as it was in certain positions like offensive line, he probably would be no doubtably a first round pick, right? But I think just because of how deep this class is in certain positions, I think it kind of pushes him down the board. But I have Hampton as number 2.
Reed, where are you at on this?
Same boat. I got Hampton number 2. But I do have these next 3 very clumped together, like touch and tags, they say, right? So I recognize that they could all go different directions. And I think it's going to really come down to some of the final testing on these guys to see how they really separate. I'm really curious, not to get off track, but I'm really curious to see how Caleb Johnson runs, what kind of speed he shows, because I think that could be a huge difference. Because if he can have something close to what Hampton can do, and probably not going to touch Henderson, but if he can show that he's got breakaway speed, then I think he could easily jump up into the number 2 spot.
Matt, where are you sitting at?
I'm a little different, but I got these like you were saying, I got these guys so close. I do have Caleb Johnson as my number 2. Just a decisive runner. He runs the ball well. He's strong. He's a bigger dude. He's violent and really good pass protector. Can catch the ball in the backfield. The one big thing where a Hampton might be jump over him is kind of what Reed was talking about, is that he does not have that clear cut second gear breakaway speed where he's just going to break it off and like, hey, he's into the second level. Nobody's catching this guy. That's just not kind of his game. And it depends on what he runs. Maybe he shows a little bit of testing where he has some more of that speed that you really didn't see on tape. That might push him up a little bit more, but I just love his size and his ability to, be a decisive runner north south and just get after it.
Yeah, I'm with Mass. I have Caleb at 2 on that. I'm almost for the exact same reasons. I mean, that guy he's a physical bruiser, and I see that maybe translating a little bit quicker in the NFL game, coming out of the gate. So we've kind of covered both of those. Where are you guys sitting below those 3?
So I'll take this one. So the thing with Caleb Johnson is, to your and Matt's point, you knew what Iowa was doing. They don't have a quarterback. They have a tight end. You know what they're doing. There's a couple of college teams that do that, and they do that in the NFL too. So that's what puts him into like that tier, that second tier for me. But I think after like pro days and stuff and the speed, that I think 2B is Henderson, just because flat out speed. He's a wonderful pass protector. You see it against in the big games. He can be a 3-down back. He's got breakaway speed at any point. We saw it in the playoffs. He was 3-down back against Oregon. He was 3-down back against Texas. They didn't feature him as much in the Notre Dame game, but we've seen it throughout the season. We don't have to see it every single game, but just like his speed and his overall testing. But the thing that kind of knocks Henderson down for me, and it gives him like maybe that 2B 2C, is his previous lower body injuries. I think two seasons in a row he had a lower body injury. I think it was a hamstring. So that kind of gives me pause because lower leg injury, sometimes you don't always come back from that, but he seems like he has. But yeah, I think Henderson is 2B for me, and then Caleb Johnson's 2C.
Yeah,
Dan, how about you?
I agree. Yeah. I have Henderson as 3, and not because so to your point. I think his lower body injuries are a concern, but you put him with somebody like a Judkins, right? Like there's teams who have that guy that's like a Judkins. And look, I love Judkins, but he's not in my top 5, right? But like that idea of using him in the ways he's supposed to be meant to be used, Henderson as an offensive weapon can take it to the house at any moment. And I value that. Right. I value that in the draft. Now, not everybody values just a guy who can just take one to the house. Right. Like they want the complete package. I think the fact that Henderson can be such an offensive weapon, I had to put him 3.
No, I completely understand. And we've had this discussion, Dan, throughout the season on Rico. And I really like Rico Dowdle for the Cowboys. And one of their main concerns with him was that breakaway speed. He's not going to break it. He doesn't have that game-changing speed where you're worried about him scoring from anywhere on the field. That's something that Henderson 1,000% can do. We saw it throughout the college football playoffs where you get the ball to him in some space and you might as well just put 6 on the board. It doesn't matter what's going to happen. So like he's right there behind. I had it Caleb Johnson, and then I had it Hampton, and then Henderson, and they're like we've been talking about. They're all so close that I don't really think you can go wrong with any of them.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't differ. I've got Henderson actually at 3, and then Johnson at 4. And echoing the same thought, the reason that Henderson jumps up is because of his breakaway speed. And to bring it to our current state of affairs in the NFL, Saquon Barkley is finding so much success this season because of his giant breakaways. People are seeing this. It's such a big difference. I was just looking at PFF, and he had 25 runs of 15 plus or more. I'm talking about Barkley. That was tops in the league. 45.2% of his yardage has come from long runs during the regular season and postseason. That's so significant. Like he's gaining so much. And if you look at the success rate on the ground for Philadelphia, it's actually gone down, but he's making up for it on the ground by making these long runs. So that's why their EPA on the ground has rocketed, but their success rate has gone down. So it's kind of showing the advantage of having these breakaway running backs, because the best way to sustain a drive is not to have to sustain it for very long.
Let me ask you guys a question. Oh, sorry, Cam.
I was just going to say Henderson, the only ding I really had on Henderson was the injury history, an injury in 2022 and 23. And just because we know the way that they're running these running backs and the lifespan has shortened on them, that was my big ding on him.
Yeah. Sorry for cutting you off. I apologize.
No.
I was just going to ask, now it doesn't have to be 5, but I want to know, because this has gotten a lot of traction, I think, since the playoffs and the end of the year and the way he played at the end of the year. Where in your running back rankings do you guys have Cam Scatterbo? And it could be 10, it could be 15, wherever you have him. Just I'm wondering where you guys have him. Dan, you're saying 5?
Yeah, he's on my list as 5 right now. And the only reason I think that is look, while his offensive line was pretty good, I think he has the ability to be that guy who can not only make people miss, but also has great contact balance, right? Yeah. And I think in the NFL, contact balance is really important, more so than even college. Because look, I love college football. I think every one of us here does love college football. But there is a distinct difference between the way a college player at linebacker is going to hit you than a NFL linebacker, right? And it doesn't matter what division, it doesn't matter what conference, it doesn't matter what league, division, it doesn't matter any of that. I think contact balance matters in the NFL. And so I think that's why I put Scatterbo at 5. Now he's kind of barely at 5 because there's some things he doesn't do really all that like elite. Yeah. But I think he does well enough to kind of counteract, that whole idea, right? So I have Scatterbo at 5, but it's barely, and it'll depend on testing.
Yeah, I got him at 6 actually. I really like him, and tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, but just the way he runs and his ability to, after contact, and just stay low. He stays low and he keeps fighting through it. It kind of reminds me of that one year of Peyton Hillis.
Yeah.
But like, it just reminds me of that, of like getting his helmet and his shoulder pads low, and he's just, getting that leverage by being the lowest guy on contact.
Well, and he keeps his shoulders square,
his legs.
Right. And he keeps his shoulders square, which in the NFL is really important. You never want to turn sideways. You never want to turn, unless it's like some crazy play, which we've seen, right? I mean, look, Saquon jumps over somebody backwards. Like, it can happen, right? But I think, you're like, all right, bro. Like,
not normally.
I think as the younger kids say, my grandson would say, you're doing too much. But I think in the NFL, being able to understand to keep those shoulders square, like you said, keep that low balance, that center, really helps him with through contact. And in the NFL, broken tackles is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Agree. Do you guys think Ollie Gordon has helped himself? I mean, it seems like he was the thing, and then he kind of fell off. Do you feel like maybe he's brought himself back in a little bit?
Ooh.
Oh, man.
I know, we're all like,
right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
That one's tough because he was the
next thing.
He was that guy everybody was going to watch.
Yeah,
he's tough.
Yeah, it almost seems like, we always talk about it, like there was like a decline in, the running back position value in the NFL, and all of a sudden all this great draft class, so it's like the best running back draft class in 17. It shows up, and now all these guys are like on your board, and then like everyone that you thought you were gonna watch, like it's basically flipped upside down, and now it's almost like these teams are making sure everything else is in line so they can get one of these premium backs. It's a good thing to have, but like you said, like the top five that we think is going to be top five running backs. I mean, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 that you thought would be there, and now like like you said, Ollie Gordon, he's not even. He might never be people's top 8. So
right.
Yeah.
I just got real concerns about his ability to laterally move and get out of there. If the line didn't really block perfectly, his ability to his lateral movement to get out of there really quick and be able to get positive yards out of a situation like that, I got some concerns. And then obviously he doesn't have that breakaway speed either. He got chased down a lot in college, and that's in college. So what's it going to be like in the pros? How is he going to be able to have those big runs? So those are some concerns I have with him.
So let me drop the ball real quick, because but look, like to your point, he doesn't have the breakaway speed. There's certain things he doesn't do. He doesn't pass pro at all, right? Like he's not great. If you watch him, he gets blown up a lot, right? Yeah. Like in pass pro. But let's be honest, there's a tidbit in the draft that we rarely all talk about, right? Like we bring it up here and there. We, something big will break. Look, he had the DUI charge too. Right? Like let's be honest. Like teams look at that. While people want to look at the base skill of a player, and there's guys who we've seen who have unreal skill, but off-field stuff or stuff in the locker room can and has impacted their draft status. So while Ollie Gordon has had great years up until this year he took a step back. Some of that's probably Oklahoma State. Like let's be real, right? Like some of that's just the way they've built. But to that point, he also has a couple of off-field concerns. Like that is a piece we don't all talk about enough. And he had a DUI just this year. So what's that going to look like when he's out of college and the repercussions aren't just hey, I'm going to pull your scholarship, right? Yeah. Is he going to make the same decision? And I think that is important to note when you're talking about when we all talk about these players, is sometimes that off-field concerns may bump them in our rankings or the way we see a player. And we don't state that. We say, this person's great. Yeah, 3rd round pick, da-da-da-da-da. And people may go, well, wait, this guy's great. And you're like, okay, hold up. And that's when you bring it in. You're like, well, hold up. He had this. So, while Ollie Gordon has some ability, and I think he's a little bit more of that old school, almost Marion Barber type, right? Like just that kind of, I'm going to run through you if I can kind of a guy.
Yeah. But
by the same token, he has some off-field concerns that we all need to consider.
Agree. Okay, let's shift out of the running back class, because we could probably continue on this one all night. And, so we just, in the last 10, 15 days or whatever it was, we had the East-West Shrine game and we had the Senior Bowl. Give me your person that shined, stood out, what you loved about him, what you saw him, and what do you think's going to happen?
I'll go first on this. Gray Zabel, North Dakota State. See Reed shaking his head like you have him too. Sorry guys.
Yep. I was looking. I figured someone was going to take him. Yeah.
Really raise your hand if you picked him. No, I didn't. But yeah.
And we see it with the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, position flex is what they talk about for like the past decade, and the fact that he's played almost every position on the offensive line, and then he moves and he plays center, and it seems like he's having no issue with it in the Senior Bowl. I mean that speaks leaps and bounds on like the mental fortitude, the toughness, and everything that you need to play. And I think he's like 6'7", 305. He has quick lateral movement. He can get out and push blocks and stuff like that. I mean, for an FCS guy to be like potentially, a first round draft pick is crazy to even think about.
Short arms is the only thing keeping him away from being a first round tackle.
Yep.
Right.
All right.
Right. Dan, who do you got?
So, I was gonna bring. I watched the Senior Bowl. Hunter Wohler was kind of my guy, the safety, right? I think he's a little bit of a linebacker type guy. He might kind of be a tweener, right? Like we've seen those tweeners where you're kind of a safety, but you're also a linebacker because maybe you don't have the side to side to be a safety, but you do have the side to side to be a linebacker. But I was going to bring him up. But in reality, who I'm bringing up is Johnny Walker. Who might be
Don't
my guy
let Jerry hear that name. Don't let Jerry hear it.
We all talked about it. We were going to talk about a player, a team must draft. Like we kind of brought this up. It's coming. Sorry for the lead in there. Johnny Walker. Look, he played out of Missouri. The guy, every year has improved on his sack numbers. He's violent. He can set an edge. He's a solid tackler. He does not quit. His motor continues to go. And he was a stalwart. He was an absolute linchpin to that Missouri defense. And I think Johnny Walker's a guy to kind of watch. If his testing goes a little higher, he could jump a little higher than I think people will expect. But I love where his base is right now. So Johnny Walker out of Missouri, I think, is one of the guys to watch for.
Nice. Reed, who stood out to you?
I liked Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. I'm a sucker for the big guy, and the first day he was terrible, and I was just thinking, what a bummer, because everyone's looking for an X, a big guy that knows how to use his body. Not just a softie, but a big guy who knows how to use his body. And this guy has great hands. He catches everything, and he's got a big catch radius. He can go low even. He's bendable. He doesn't have blazing speed, so it was all going to come down to, technically what he could do. And I thought he came off looking fantastic with route running and breaks and stuff like that, which is somewhat impressive given his size. Typically, those great route runners that you see on the field, they're going to be playing at the Z or they're going to be playing in the slot. They're not the X. The X is a little sloppier. But I absolutely love good route running, knowing as a quarterback, knowing where the guy is going to be, where you have to deliver the ball. And he's going to be there. He's got vice grip hands and a huge catch radius. I mean, that's just a beautiful thing. So he really impressed me. And I know he didn't lead a lot of lists for the hot performer for Senior Bowl weekend or week. I thought he did fantastic. I thought he checked all the boxes that I was looking for. And I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in him.
I like that one. Mass, where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going over to the East-West Shrine game, and I'm going with Kobe Bryant. Not the Lakers legend, but Kobe Bryant, Kansas cornerback. I stood out great time at the East-West Shrine Bowl. I really like this guy. He has good jab. He has good arm length. He is a man coverage cornerback. This guy is a man coverage cornerback, has really good ball skills. He is great at his closing speed, is great. So this guy is somebody who his deep pass speed is kind of where he gets kind of like so you could kind of see like a Trayvon Diggs or Deron Bland kind of thing for the Cowboys, where that deep ball sometimes can get them. He's the same way, but he's a ball hawk like them. He can go off the ball. His ball skills are great, and he has that really good closing speed. One other issue with him that's kind of dragging him down, I think he has the ball skills to be a first round, but one of the main things that's kind of dragging him back into that second round is he's really slim. Really small. He's 5'11" and he's 171 pounds. Slim body, so people are a little bit worried about injuries with him. So that's kind of what's driving him down. But he had a great showing at the East-West Shrine, and I really liked him at Kansas. So that's somebody I think is a good day 2 pick, second round guy who a team's going to get a great player in my opinion.
So my guy is from the East-West Shrine game. He was a late invitation, and it wasn't until his performance at the Hula Bowl. And that's Efton Chisholm, the third from Eastern Washington. Wide receiver, Cooper Kupp's, school. He comes in. This kid is phenomenal. He's quick off the line of scrimmage. His eyes, he's completely ball tracking the whole time. He's got an extensive route tree. He can separate even without some of that top end speed that normally is needed. He's a big blocker. He has an elite change of direction. One nice notable about him, 53 games in a row, every single game he ever played for the Eagles, he caught a ball in. Nice. And set a record in that way. He can play the slot. He can be a deep threat. He can play special teams, kick and punt returning. 5'11", 200 pounds. This last season, he hit 1,311 yards and 13 touchdowns. He's something really to look for. And like I said, he wasn't on anybody's radar till he hit the Hula Bowl, really. And then he ended up that late invitation into the East-West Shrine and ended up making their first team.
Nice.
So, yeah, he stood out for me. Okay, we're going to go into Convince Me.
By the way, Reed, I have to admit, I love the Caleb Johnson. I love the Caleb Kobe Bryant pick. Love it. You the man. All right, go ahead.
That was me, man.
Hey, if you checked my box, I have had Kobe Bryant to the Cowboys a couple times. I might just be saying. No, I really like the kid. I think you're right. Great name. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry about that. I wanted to double up on Massey there to say, you know what? That's a good one. That's a good one. Kobe Bryant.
So Reed actually gave us this one, and it's Convince Me, a player that everyone else loves that you don't.
You know what? And what got me on that was hearing Mass fight everybody all the time on, well, anything, but specifically fighting everybody on the receivers, any receiver after number one. So that's what really inspired me.
I'm kind of thinking that mine and Mass is the same one, but Tyler.
I've actually not. I think I'm going to surprise you guys a little bit with mine.
Awesome. So I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but it's Travis Hunter. I don't see it with him. And like I said earlier in the podcast, it's level of competition for me. He would have been consensus number one, recruit in the nation. He had all those deals. He stays at Jackson State, moves with Dion. But like the level of competition, like I would have, and LP and I talked about this on our podcast. Like I would have loved to see him in the big, like I would have loved Colorado to make the playoffs, because I would have loved to see him play against against the Texas corners. I would have loved to see him potentially go up against like the Penn State corners, and obviously like Ohio State too. But the level of competition for me, and like people say like off all these stats and whatnot, but there was a game they were up 52-0. He was out there Pat Stadden, and it's like, he did it. He played the most consecutive amount of snaps in a season. Congratulations. But I just like, it doesn't impress me. It doesn't wow me when I see it. It's the level of competition for me in that case. Yeah.
That's interesting. I've mentioned before, Stanford's receiver, who I really like, is a second round receiver. I think hopefully I'm not butchering his name, Ayo Manoer.
I like him.
He took it to Travis Hunter. It wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago when they played, but like got over 200 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. Like he embarrassed him in that game. So that's interesting. Yeah. What about you, Dan?
Dan, you with us?
Yeah. Man, listen, like I'm thinking about how to phrase this, because I think there's going to be people who are going to be super pissed at me for saying this. Cam Ward. Yeah, I think Cam Ward has the ability to be a great pick, right? But I think if you force Cam, I think he's going to be very scheme specific. And if you force Cam Ward to be in a more traditional, structured style quarterback, you're going to fail. Right? Most of his stuff comes from outside of structure, right? When we say that, it means, he's on the move. He's, pulling out of the pocket. He's shifting the offensive line a little bit, like different things that allow him to move around. I think if you keep Cam Ward potentially in a more structured situation is when you're going to see bust on him. So you look, I'm going to say Cam Ward, and it's not a slight on Cam Ward. I just think he's going to be very scheme specific, and in the wrong scheme, he's going to be a bust.
No, I can see that.
Yeah, I can't convince you otherwise. I mean, I'm completely uninspired by this quarterback class.
Oh yeah.
And this is something as Cowboys fans that we've looked at for quite some time, because there was a debate, however unserious it was, about whether or not to re-sign Dak Prescott, because it had to be done last year, because if it got to this far, it would have been too late, right? So we were all looking ahead at this quarterback class, and it sucked, and it still sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody could come out of this, but that's like with every quarterback class in that regard, I guess. You could hit Yahtzee, but I mean, this class is not good. It's not safe. Cam Ward, I mean, I guess you would get him if you needed a quarterback and you're picking number 1 overall, but you're doing that out of obligation. So yeah, I can't convince you otherwise, because I don't believe it.
Yeah, I'm to the point where I probably would want Sam Darnold as a free agent over anybody in this class. I hate to say that, guys, but honestly, I take him for a year and see what's in the next class at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, do the stopgap thing. And look, to Reed's point, like any year, right? I mean, look, Tom Brady was a 6th round draft, right? I mean, he was the end of the draft. Like, the dude was just kind of like a dude, Everybody was like, Tom Brady, and he's considered one of the, elite quarterbacks of all time. Some people call him the GOAT, some people call him a home, whatever. Dude is definitely one of the best of all time.
Yeah.
So, like, you can find them, to Reed's point, but when you're looking at it on paper, which is what all we have at this point, right? People are going to be like, this guy's going to be amazing and this guy's going to be terrible. And then, look, we don't know that. This is all projection off of what they did in college, how their combines are going to go, how they did in Senior Bowls, how they did in all these different things. Truth of the matter is, you're right. This class is not on paper going, oh my gosh, it's not Andrew Luck, right? Like, we knew
it's not
Andrew
on film either.
Yeah, we knew
paper or film.
We're like, Andrew Luck, that's the dude, right? Like, we all knew that.
Right.
And Andrew Luck became the dude, right? Like, he was great until he's like, I'm out, peace, deuces,
And then the Colts invested in an offensive line.
Well, yeah, that's why he was like, deuce, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm not ending my career like this, But to your point, I think this quarterback class isn't all that great. I think there's it's one of those really low floor, really decent ceiling classes, right? So if you get the guy in the right system, in the right way, ask him to do the things that they specifically are good at and build around them, you have a really good shot. But if you're going to ask them to be, the next Dak or the next Lamar or the next Allen, on paper, I don't see any of that right now.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Reed, who do you got?
Okay, so I'm kind of stuck, so I'm gonna let you guys run with whoever we want to run with here. All right. There's 2 guys that I'm completely uninspired on, and I know one is gonna get Tyler up there, so maybe we should just go with that. But so first, Calvin Banks Jr., offensive lineman from Texas. He is a guy who. Oh, is that what you had, Mass?
Yeah, that's my guy, Calvin Banks Jr.
Okay. Let's push him to you then. I won't do that. I'm gonna go with the other one. All right. See, it helps to cheat.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Harold Fannin Jr., tight end, Bowling Green.
Yes.
His highlights look nice. I haven't seen his actual film. His highlights look nice. His scouting report is decent. His numbers are fantastic. I watched him do the workouts and the drills, and I don't see it. I don't see how it translates. Everything about this guy made me want him to be good because I love those guys coming from these smaller programs who are just flashing and they're just stars. But he's not terribly big. He's usually when you go like a tight end, or at least with me, you go a tight end from a small school, it's because they have these transcending physical talents where they dominate there because they're amazing and they're going to dominate here. They're usually, the super tall, heavy guys who just win matchups. Fanning just doesn't have that. He won with a lot of little passes, it looked like. Depth of target wasn't great. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I do want to be convinced because I do like rooting for these guys. So please convince me.
I love Harold Fannin Jr. I went to a game where they played against Western Michigan. Their quarterback, Bazelak, he had 187 yards passing, and 150 of them went to Harold Fannin Jr. It's crazy to see a school run basically out of a tight end set. Everything's dependent on that tight end. And
that's wild.
He did it against Texas A&M. He had 150 yards, 187 yards against Penn State. So he has done it against big teams. I'm not trying to convince you, but he reminds me a lot of Jimmy Graham. He's not going to be in your inline blocker as we see like Tyler Warren and stuff like that, but he reminds me of like a Jimmy Graham light, and Jimmy Graham's like in his prime.
Okay. You think he has the cutting ability to be able to be a route runner like Jimmy Graham was?
Yeah, I think so. And then I think, on off season, he'll, 10, 15 pounds added onto that frame.
Yeah.
I think he's a good day too, late round, third pick. So yeah.
I think right now the consensus board has him about 62, which I thought was fair. Even as a critic of him, I think that's a fair spot. Mm-hmm. I was just seeing a lot of hype around him from other people saying like early day 2 pick, and I couldn't figure that out.
Who reminds me of? Isaiah Likely.
Ooh,
that's a good player.
That's a good player,
right? Like I think he has that Isaiah Likely kind of like thing where you're like, look, man, you split you out wide, maybe kind of don't inline block you. You kind of do some stuff with him, but he reminds me of Isaiah Likely.
That's fair.
I like that comp.
Okay,
that's fair. Yeah. Massey,
well,
what are you hiding in there?
Well, Reed stole my thunder. I was.
But he didn't. He was like, "I'm gonna hand it off to you."
Yeah, he handed it off to me. It was a play fake. But yeah, so I know a lot of people thought I was going to go a certain way, but I'll get to that later in the show. Yeah, Kelvin Banks Jr. Like I've seen a lot of people have this guy top 10. And I honestly don't see it. I know that we all know a lot of Texas fans, and they're really high on him. They're high on their Texas players. But I get it. The guy has really good athleticism. He has lateral agility. He has the ability to get out there and pull and stuff like that. I just think that his body control and it's kind of sloppy. It's not the best. He's not the best at sustaining blocks long term. So like I think he has the potential. I think he has a very high ceiling. I really do. I think he has a high ceiling, but I think that he has a lot of technique work that he needs to work on. And so can he get there? That's a question. Obviously, anybody who you're like, hey, they got a really high ceiling, but they need to work on their techniques. It's a big question if they can get there or not. So a guy like that who has that kind of sloppy technique, in my opinion, and you're talking about a top 10 pick. Yeah, I really don't want a top 10 pick that I'm like, all right, I got to work on his technique to get him to be, that's the guy maybe later in the first round or, early second round that I'm like, hey, if this guy has a high ceiling, if I can get his technique down and get him to be more balanced, then he could be a great tackle in this league. But that's not a top 10 pick in my opinion. So anybody else like him and want to convince me otherwise, please do. Texas fans, you out there, and if you tweet at me, do whatever. If you can convince me otherwise, I'm willing to listen. But right now, I don't see him.
He's a Tyler Guyton.
Man, right there, Dan. I mean, that's a guy where you can see it. Yeah, and I don't know how they're gonna react with you comparing their guy to an Oklahoma player, but you might get some hate for that. But I can see that. That's a good comp for him.
I went back and forth about mine, and I'm going to take it. You guys know I'm not afraid. Bring it.
Let's do it.
Never
Shedeur
scared.
Sanders is not it. Not it. He's not it. I am
in
sorry.
any way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
No, in absolutely no way. He makes the worst decisions under pressure. The worst decisions. I am sorry. We have talked about this, the level of competition. What happened when he was in the Pac-12? When the Pac-12 had 8 of the top 25 teams, he was horrid. He got shut down. He got knocked down. He didn't produce. He went to the Big 12. Are we going to act like the Big 12 was any kind of real super competition? Arizona State won it. We're going to keep it a buck. He's not it. And I'm sorry. You can try and convince me. Like Matt said, go ahead, tweet at me. Go ahead, try it. It's not ever going to happen.
People love that guy.
They do.
He's like Cam Ward, right?
But with a big old fancy watch in the sunglasses.
In the right system, with the right cast, with the right offensive line, with the right offensive coordinator, with the right. Yes. But I agree, Cam.
Maybe.
That's why I kind of went Cam Ward, though. But I agree. I think you have an absolute point here. This quarterback class is a very scheme-specific class, or at least early on.
Where do you guys
I think early on you're going to find a lot of very scheme-specific classes. And look, if you're a Pittsburgh, right? Like if you're a Pittsburgh, these guys are not the guys, right? They're just not. And if you're the Giants and you're going after Cam Ward, let's say, you're going to need to adjust your entire system to fit a Ward, to fit a Sanders. 100% agree. Thank you. Good night. No, I'm joking.
Let me ask you, even with this draft class, and we've been talking, kind of attacking this quarterback draft, this class. And so even with this class, where would you guys put him if his last name wasn't Sanders?
Same place I put him now. I'd put him in a second or third round pick on most draft boards. I think second or third round kind of fits him. Look, he has the ability to move. He has some of the tools that you want when you're on the move as a quarterback, right? Like you have some of the very basic tools in 2025 era of football that you could go, maybe, right? Like I could see this as a consensus top 5 overall pick. I don't know, man. Like if you want to pick him at the end of the first, kind of early second, mid-second, okay, I could buy that. I could see where you find his skill set
maybe
to fit stuff. But man, like as the top 5 pick in any other draft, I don't see it.
If he was in last year's class, we wouldn't, regardless of what his last name was, we wouldn't have even spoke about him. I mean, not even close.
He's
kind of like QB7 last year, QB8.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. So I think the thing we have to keep in mind here is that quarterbacks are always going to have a special value.
Yep.
And they're going to get rewarded not because of their individual ability, but where they line up ranked with the others. So whether you're graded, with a 92.5 score or an 82.5 score, if you're number 1, you're going at the top of the draft.
Yeah.
Right.
In that class. And that's what he's aided by. If he was in a different class, like last year's class, there's no way. Where would we put him there? I would
5 to
late day 2 for me.
Yeah, 5 to 7, maybe 10.
Right.
Not even 5. I can't even put him in the top 5. There's absolutely no way he goes in the top 5 last year.
Last year's class
again. Scheme specific. If you're a team that you're like, I'm going to build around a really more mobile quarterback, get him out of the pocket, not keep much like Cam Ward, right? Not keep him as a traditional in structure quarterback. When I say in structure, meaning, you know, you have the line, you block right, you're looking down, you're making your reads, you know, you're kind of in that pocket. He's not that guy.
Yeah.
In fact, I would bet none of the guys in this draft are really that guy, right? At least none of the top.
Oh yeah, no.
None of them are really that guy that you're like, yeah, you know what? If they shut down my running back, I can rely on this guy to burn the offense. Right now, I don't see a lot of that in this draft.
And to what Reed was saying, with quarterbacks are going to go because they're quarterbacks. It's why I understand how valuable the quarterback position is, and that's why it gets put up like that. But it's why I've said, and I'll continue to say, that quarterback is the most overrated position in all of sports. And it's because of situations where, like this, where you have a Shedeur Sanders who is being pushed up the draft boards because this QB class is so weak. So they're like, hey, a guy who would normally probably go in the second, third round is now a top 5 pick just because of the position he plays. And so it's a position that I get the value, and I understand it's the most valuable player on the football field, but it's also the most overrated position in sports.
Fair. Okay, we have come to one that I've been looking for.
Oh yes.
Your Vontae Mack, no matter what. It doesn't have to be your favorite team. Any team in the NFL.
Oh, isn't it easy?
What position, what player, who do they have to take no matter what?
Yeah, so this one's easy. It's the Chargers and Colson Loveland. I would originally say Tyler Warren, but he's not going to be there. Miami picked before them, and the Colts picked before them, and they need a tight end too. So it's going to be Colson Loveland, and no one loves Colson Loveland more than Jim Harbaugh. He recruited him, you know, and that offense. That offense is predicated on Jim wants to run the football. We saw it at Michigan, and you know Loveland is an athlete. He is the second best tight end in this class. He is an athlete. He's an inline blocker, and he runs very crisp routes. And that's what Justin Herbert needs. He needs someone besides Ladd McConkey to be able to catch balls for him. They don't have anyone else, and so I think you get him a good tight end. I know that they need interior offensive linemen and maybe a tackle. But I mean, you get him a pass catcher, and that offense. I mean, they would picking 22nd, so they're up there. And to get him a pass catcher, and that team might be a little bit different this year.
That's a good one.
Very good one, Dan.
Man, all right. So I'm going to go the Bengals because nobody talks about the Bengals enough. I think look, I've seen them say some people say Ibuka. I get it because if T. Higgins leaves, I totally get their wide receiver pick. Kenneth Grant, if he is there for the Bengals, is a absolute must. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, run stuffer in this class, right? Mm-hmm. He had 27 pressures, 5 batted passes this season. One of the things the Bengals need is defense. Their defense has been a little iffy. Let's be real. They have the offensive firepower, whether T or leaves or not. I think their defense has to be a focus. And if Kenneth Grant is there, he needs to be the pick. If Kenneth Grant is not there, all right, all bets are off. But if he is there, Kenneth Grant has to be the pick for the Bengals.
Not a bad one.
Not bad at all. Reed, who do you got?
Well, I'm going to talk about the Cowboys because they're my team, and I'm going to find a player that I like, and I'm going to stick him on my team. So I really liked Anthony Belton, offensive tackle from up the road here, NC State. Unsure of him at first. He's a big, huge, strong guy. He's 6'6", 340. 35-inch arms. So he's prototype on the bigger side. The thought was that he was going to struggle a little bit with speed rushers at the Senior Bowl because he's such a big guy who depends on his strength. But he dispelled those fears and was able to keep up. He still showed his power. He still showed his ability to get to the second level. It was impressive because all of the strengths and weaknesses were all turned up in the affirmative, I guess. The strengths were affirmed. The weaknesses were dispelled. He looks like the real deal. He practiced at both guard and tackle. Both of them he played well, so you'd obviously want to put him at tackle. But to have the ability to play inside, if you're in a situation where you're just trying to get your 5 best on the field, great guy to have. And then, obviously leaning towards the higher value position being tackle. And my team, the Cowboys, is a whole lot of question marks at both tackle spots. So having a guy who fits cleanly into that role is pretty important. Let's see. His current consensus place is 96, which is absurd. Which makes him that's what I really want. I want a value. He's a first round guy. I think that's going to change. I think as boards get updated and more testing takes place, he's definitely going to move into second round. But as a second round guy, I'm very happy with that. So you somebody I'd be banging the table for. I'd be trying to jockey for position.
You'd be comfortable with him at 44 with the Cowboys?
I would. I think there's going to be a whole lot of moving and shaking, not just by the Cowboys, but by other teams. Because this draft class is so poor. There's so few first round grades on guys. Yeah. And and it's not only that, like we can all agree on that, but I think what people aren't talking enough about is the difference between the first round graded guys and the second round graded guys isn't much. Like any one of those guys could jump each other. So it's going to really come down to people picking the guy that they want, the guy that they fancy, that fits their system the best. And that's why I think there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking. I don't think you're going to get a good ransom for trading back. I think you're going to see kind of inappropriate value. But I think that's what we're to expect. I think the Cowboys are going to do that because they want to recoup more picks because that lets them spend less money on veterans. And I think there's a good chance that not just our second round pick we trade back, but also the first round pick we trade back a little bit.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
No. Mass. And I'm feeling you might be taking mine.
Maybe. I'm going to say that the New England Patriots.
Oh, you didn't.
Vontae Mack, no matter what, is Tet. The Patriots just invested in Drake May last year, and he has taken over, and he is their new starting quarterback. They have a terrible receiving core. And
hey,
I'm sorry, they do. They do. They have a terrible receiver. They don't have weapons for him. And I'm sorry, if you're going to have a franchise quarterback, a young franchise quarterback, who, by the way, came into as a top-rated quarterback last year, but one guy that probably out of all the top-rated quarterbacks that people said needed the most work and the most growth. And so he's a guy that needs weapons, and he needs people to be able to throw the ball to. And Tet is really the only star receiver in this draft. So, I would say that they're, no matter what, it's like he's going to fall to them at 4. He's not going top 3. He's going to fall to them at 4. And I hate it because I want him on my team, but I think the Patriots got to take him. I think they need a weapon, and he is a weapon. So that I think he is the pick there at number 4 with the Patriots.
Well, I thought for sure you were going to take this one. I mean, it is your man crush that we need to protect. And that is the Chicago Bears. Absolutely have to protect Caleb. Mm-hmm. I mean, 68 sacks. That's the third most ever in NFL history. 31.6% pressure rate. It's the highest of anybody that had 268 dropbacks. Mm-hmm. The league average is at 20%. His wide receivers were generating 3.6% target separation, which was 10th in the league. They were getting open
Yeah.
But the man was being destroyed. So the Chicago Bears and Ryan Poles has a way of, the man has created draft picks and he can do this. They have 8 picks. 4 of them are in the top 75. He has 1 first, 2 seconds, and a third to deal. And his Vontae Mack is absolutely Will Campbell. He has to do that. And then he has to go after Trey Smith in free agency because 3 of their linemen are free agents and none of the 3, and one of them is a Husky, are not worth keeping.
Yeah.
So they have got to get an offensive line.
Yeah.
And I think Ben Johnson knows this. He has plenty of weapons already for Caleb. He's got to get that offensive line. So some way, somehow, they have to make sure that they're in position for Will Anderson.
Yeah, and they also brought over Hank Farley from the offensive line coach from Detroit, who's now the offensive coordinator for the Bears under Ben Johnson. So I think you're right there. I think that's something that they did in Detroit when they rebuilt that team, is they rebuilt that offensive line. I would not be shocked at all as if that's the game plan in Chicago, is to rebuild that offensive line there. And yeah, that's a great starting point, is Will Campbell.
Yeah, they got to do something.
Is Cam is Will Campbell your number 1 graded offensive tackle?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does everybody feel about Josh Simmons?
How is his knee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
If his knee's fine,
if his knee's fine, if his knee's fine, he's my number 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
and
I got to see those medicals
that was
first.
That was my red flag. Otherwise,
and to go with Massey,
he's actually on my note here that if knee is okay,
to go with
it would have been him.
New England could go him.
Yeah,
because
if his knee checks out,
protect Drake May. They have to. They absolutely need to do better on that offensive line. So if they don't go Tet, he is an absolute possibility for the New England Patriots.
It's that meme from a couple of years ago when it was the Bengals who had the terrible offensive line, and who do they go with? Do they go with the Jamar Chase, or do they go with the Penei Sewell? And that's an age-old question. Do you protect the quarterback, or do you just give him a weapon he just throws it up to?
Right.
Yeah.
Both guys have worked out pretty well. I'm just going to say both guys have worked out pretty well.
Both worked out great. We're good. Let's just
both of them are all right, guys. They did okay.
They'll be all right. They'll be decent. They'll be decent. Nothing special. Nothing special.
It's all good. It's all good. Okay. So this is gonna be a hot one. This is what you're smoking.
Yeah.
I want you to drop your hot take in this draft. Give me a hot take.
Yeah, so you kind of stole mine earlier. I don't think the Giants go quarterback in round 1. I think they go Sam Darnold and go Jackson Dart round 2. I just think that that's the way for them to go. I think, like you said, he could be the bridge quarterback for them. And I think Dable's seat might be getting a little bit hotter as the years go on. So he's going to want something that's a little more established. We've seen this year that Sam was able to do it. And as I've talked to Massey over the past couple of weeks, he said that Jackson Dart is his QB2, and I think he would do well under Brian Dable, and he would train him sort of like he did Josh Allen. So I think that could be the move for this draft.
I just want to say, Jackson Dart is definitely my QB2, and the fact that PFF has a 4th round grade on him is just mind blowing. They had a 6th round grade on him, and then after the Senior Bowl and him balling out in the Senior Bowl, they've moved him up to a 4th round grade, which just insane to me. Even if you don't have him QB2, a 4th round grade
early in this, right?
Yes, very early.
Yeah.
The combine hasn't happened, the pro days haven't happened.
But just based on tape, I don't see how it's a 4th round.
I like Jackson Dart. I think he's probably a 2nd or 3rd rounder, depending on how he scores out. Right? There's certain things that I definitely want to see from Jackson Dart that I'm like, if you can do that, then cool, let's roll with you.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I agree. I think Jackson Dart is definitely a worthy name to bring up.
Dan, what do you got?
All right. So this guy was was kind of like I was hinging on him a little bit when we talked about like the Senior Bowl and all of that. I have been big on him. You guys know I have been big on him. Darius Alexander. I am telling you, this dude is going to climb up boards. I could see him going as early as the 3rd round. Potentially late 2nd if his scoring goes differently. This dude, if you pop on tape of him, so look, a lot of us are Cowboys fans. We're all Cowboys fans, but we do like to take the hat off.
The Bears.
No,
I'm kidding.
Right. Like we do like to take the hat off once in a while and we talk draft and we talk stuff that isn't Cowboys, right? But like if you're gonna fit the mold of what the new defensive coordinator wants, he is that guy, right? He's not the 320-pound run stuffing dude. He is going to be the guy who's going to get off the ball quick as a defensive tackle. He's going to shed blocks. He's going to work across the line. He's going to work through trash. He's going to find that ball. He is just a heat-seeking missile when it comes to finding the ball. So I think Darius Alexander is a guy to watch, climb up draft boards, and he is going to surprise a lot of people by the end of pre-draft season as we roll into the draft.
Reed, do you got a consensus on him right now, or where like people are looking at him?
Yeah, hold on.
I know mock drafts. I've done quite a few mock drafts, and usually he's going like the 6th round, 7th round. But I don't know where.
I think most people have 5, like 5th, 4th round, but I think he's going to be higher.
I've got a consensus here at 99.8.
99.8. Okay.
So I think he's going to go a little higher than people expect. But man, this kid, hop on some tape, watch his highlights. I don't care how you watch him, but he is going to flash on you the second you start watching him play.
Yeah, I think he's going to test really well. He's going to drop jaws, and then those that haven't gone and already watched his tape are going to.
Fair. Reed, what do you got? What's your
all
hot
right?
take?
My hot take isn't totally sizzling, but it's that the 2nd tier of the running back class is going to be overdrafted and disappointing.
Ooh.
All of the 3 guys that we all had locked in, touch and tags, I think they are going to be overdrafted. I think there's going to be a run. I think they're going to be drafted close to each other. And then there's going to be probably an equal number of running backs that are drafted behind them that are going to outperform them in their pro career.
So there's a Bucky Irving sitting behind them.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a situation like that. Any of the guys that we talked about, there's so many guys I've highlighted that I really love the value at round 3 and 4, where I would be happy just sitting there and waiting to see who slips through the cracks because there's enough guys there that I really like.
Yeah.
So I would be very concerned about anybody jumping up end of round 1, beginning of round 2, because I think that's where the run is probably going to be on those guys. I don't think you're getting good value right there because there's such a disparity too between Genty and these guys.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be this huge chasm, and then when it hits, it's going to run.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely. Mass.
Okay.
Come on, bring it.
I tweeted this out a couple last week, I think it was. And remember, this is all about value. Like Reed was talking about, is the value of it. And this isn't saying that these players are going to be bad. It's just the value of it. And so my hot take is that the gap between Tet at wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 is much, much bigger than the gap between wide receivers 2 and 3, who are mostly Ekbuka and Burden. and wide receiver 4, whoever you have wide receiver 4, or maybe Io Minor. So the gap between Tet and those guys is way, way bigger than the gap between Burden and Egbuka and Io Minor, if you have him as your 4, which I do. So it's just, and so the value of the guys like Burden or Egbuka at a 12, where the Cowboys are picking, where he's a very popular pick at 12, or in that top 15 range of either one of those guys, the value is not there, in my opinion, because these are guys who, in a normal draft, are probably in a normal wide receiver draft like last year or the year before, are probably more second round players. And so you are doing a lot like you're doing with the quarterbacks this year. And since the wide receiver class is so weak this year, you're moving them up because you're like, oh, we got to get a wide receiver. We got to get a wide receiver. So you're moving these guys up who are usually probably second rounders just into top 15 picks. And the value's just not there, where a value for picking an Io Minor in the second round is so mumuch better than picking a Burden or a Egbuka at 12 or 14 or something like that. It's insanely better. I know, Dan, you don't agree, but the value is just so much better of getting a wide receiver who right now you have at 4, 5, 6 than overdrafting one of these two guys, in my opinion. And I know I've been getting killed on it on Twitter about it, but I will continue to. We are just so desperate to have wide receivers in this league that you are overvaluing these guys who, in a normal draft, they're just not in that draft range. So think of it that way. You're gonna have. There's not much difference between wide receiver 2 and 3 than there is between 4 and 5, and so just wait, get that 4 or 5 at a better value second round pick than wasting a first round pick on these guys.
I think with me, I think what I feel nowadays, and look, my idea of wide receiver has changed slightly, right? Like we have seen a player like Tyreek Hill become a 1, right? Like let's be real. And he's not the big dude. He plays a lot out of slot. He can line up outside, right? He's done that. I think nowadays what you need is wide receivers who can separate, right? Because of the quick passing, the shorter routes. You know, yes, you have guys that you need routes to develop. And look, you know, the Cowboys have one wide receiver right now. I'm going to say it honestly, one wide receiver right now. Right, one viable true wide receiver. You put somebody like an Egbuka or a Burden next to somebody, even in the slot, next to a Lamb, you're going to find way higher production because they can separate than you will than the traditional X or Y style wide receiver. And again, if you're talking traditional X and Y, I 100% agree with you. I don't think either of those two guys, Burden or Egbuka, are a traditional X or Y. They're not going to be that guy. If that's what you're looking for, then you are absolutely missing the boat and you're going to bust on these guys. But if you have a number 1 and you have a tried and true number 1, you stick either of them next to them, even as a slot guy, they immediately become your number 2 in a way, as long as you have the right scheme and the right way to run these guys. So that's why I disagree. Not because I don't think you're right in the aspect of traditional X and Ys and the way we view wide receivers, because in that case, I 100% agree with you. I am not lining Egbuka or Burden up in an X or a Y position. I'm just not. I'm not going to do it because, I mean, I'll throw it out there. Like, I'm not going to say, like, never line them up out there, right? Like, I think they can pull some plays off here and there. I think they can kind of fit here and there. Much like most wide receivers nowadays, they've learned to switch in and out because of the way deception works and scheming works. But I think just based on the fact that those guys can separate due to route running, due to speed, due to leverage, due to, you know, stacking wide defensive backs, you know, the understanding of how to sit in a zone, the understanding of how to beat a press, even in the slot, I think is important in 2025. Could I be wrong? 1000%.
No, I get that, and that's part of what you said is part of my issue with it. Is on a top 15 pick is a person is a player that is scheme and personnel dependent. That you're picking a top 15 pick on people who are scheme and personnel dependent, and that's why especially I don't think they fit great with the Cowboys and Lamb, and why I say Lamb in particular, and not just any number one, but with Lamb in particular, is because Lamb does so much damage. He is the best slot receiver in the NFL. He does more damage out of the slot than anybody else. So you get guys who are dependent on maybe slot only wide receivers as a top 15 pick, and you put them on a team like the Cowboys. Now you're limiting yourself on how often can you place Lamb and Igbuka or Burden out of the slot at the same time. No, so they're in slots. Lamb's on the outside most of the time. So you're limiting what Lamb does best as well with picking them. So that's why I especially don't think they're great for the Cowboys. Which I can understand your point with a team that has a number one receiver who's primarily that X receiver who stays outside most of the time.
Like the Bengals,
but yeah,
right? Let's talk the Bengals, right?
Yes,
like
they're a better option than the Cowboys in my opinion. For that.
On the Bengals, and now you got problems.
Right? Yeah, he will do way, but he would exceed better in that situation. Absolutely, I agree with you 100%.
Let me float this question to the group here. With the NFL switching to going cyclically back to more of a too high look, right? So the days of just burning deep and trying to get those big plays because everybody's crowding the box in the Seattle single highs cover scheme are kind of disappearing, and now there's the Fangio too high look where it's a series of cover too high, quarters, whatever. But the idea then is to have the safeties back to keep the plays in front of you. So those big plays aren't there like they were before. Now it is about separation. It's also about savvy and finding spots inside the little zones. How does that change your outlook and your ability to evaluate receivers?
I mean, to go off Messi's point, I think it's FOMO. I mean, you like you said, you had Tet who's a 1, and then there's that gap between 2 and 3, but you said it's not big as 4 and 5. If they don't draft one at like let's say 12 through 16, they may fear out because they're not picking again until later. And these other guys don't like to. Some teams don't like to come forward. They don't like to give up their draft capital. Like Reed said, we'll probably drop back a couple spots. So I think a lot of it's FOMO for these guys because you can always. We talk about this being like a weak quarterback class. That's something you don't want to hang your hat on because a quarterback, hanging your hat on a bad quarterback is bad. If you mess up on a wide receiver, just go draft one the next draft or later in the next round.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where you can just you hold 7 receivers. You can hold like 7 receivers on a team. You have 1 starting quarterback. So if you mess up on a receiver, cool. Draft the next one next year because they're going to be about just the same. But a team like Dallas, I think it's FOMO at that point because they don't have anyone else right now besides CeeDee Lamb and an injured Jake Ferguson. So yeah, that's what I see it.
To answer your question, Reed, I think it is you're kind of evaluating a little bit differently because a great example, and this is a guy who I've heard Igbuka comp to, which I don't agree with the comp at all. But I've heard him comp to like a St. Brown, where I don't think 5-6 years ago St. Brown is as dominant as he is now because of that, because St. Brown is so good at finding those soft spots and finding that area where like, hey, how is he always open right there in the middle? Like how is that possible? Because he's so good at finding those spots. So you do have to evaluate differently because 10 years ago, I don't think that he is as good. And I think that actually hurt him in his draft position because he fell. What was he? Was he fourth round? I don't remember exactly what round he was picked, but he was picked in the later half of the draft. I think that it is starting to shift that way, and you do have to kind of evaluate these receivers differently, which I do think helps in a way with guys like Burden and Igbuka and what they're able to do. And, they're not those deep threats that are going to go burn the defense deep, but they're more of those, find those spots and run good routes. Burden more
looking
so
for those guys that can play in traffic. There a lot more.
Yeah, so I think you definitely do have to evaluate differently and change it into the way that the NFL defenses are adapting to play these offenses and these explosive offenses.
St. Brown was a 4th-round pick.
4th round,
right?
That's right.
And to that point, and that's why wide receivers one of the weirdest positions to scout, right? Like we all. I love like safeties. I love them. I don't know. I love offensive line. I have some weird like things that
Can you talk to Jerry about loving safeties?
Man, don't get me started, right?
Seriously.
Oh, man.
Like because safeties nowadays are almost like another corner in a way, right? Like I like safeties and I love dudes. That's why I said Wohler earlier. I love dudes who will come down and make you pay for catching any ball. If you catch a ball, I'm going to hurt you as much as possible, right? Like I miss those guys. I miss those dudes. Like I love them. But, as we're talking about these wide receivers, I think part of the thing, and it's true with almost any position in the NFL, like we all know it's a copycat league, right? Like we've heard it 1,000 times. Copycat league, copyback league. But I think what happens with that is like you're now seeing the evolution of wide receiver, right? It's that idea like a St. Brown who's a 4th-round pick is dominating. Why is he dominating? It's not because the dude takes defenses off the top defenses, right? Like it's not just that. It's the fact that they are smart enough to create a separation on a press man or even a off man coverage that they know where to find themselves and come back and work themselves back to a quarterback and find that spot in the zone. And nowadays it seems like a lot of schemes are built on that rub routes and underneath passes where you clear out whole sides of offenses, right? How many times have we seen decoys where somebody will send like Jamar Chase out into the out deep and all of a sudden that underneath is wide open for a tight end or a wide receiver, right? And I think that's kind of what we're all kind of saying here is that in the draft, it's really hard because you want to go somewhat of what you see on tape and what traditional is and what works and what doesn't, because there's some tried and true things that work in the NFL. There's things that it doesn't matter the era, it doesn't matter the scheme. There are certain guys that will transcend all of that. Right. We've seen it, Lamb transcends it. Jefferson transcends it, right. Especially at wide receiver.
Yeah.
These guys transcend regardless of situation. I think in this draft, what you're seeing now is you're starting to see people and teams and scouts kind of look at players a little differently and say, okay, but is this guy a weapon? Is this guy a weapon on offense? Is this guy a weapon on defense? And I think that's kind of the disconnect we're seeing. Granted, this draft class isn't what it normally always is. I can 100% agree on that. But I think what we'll see over the next couple of drafts is guys like an Egbuka, guys like a Burden, guys who can sit there and say, I can get open, so I am worthy of a higher draft pick than you would have taken traditionally on me.
Well, Mass, that was a hot take, wasn't it?
I knew I've been getting killed on it.
I don't dislike the take, but I also am at the point where weapons are weapons in the NFL, and especially the way offenses are moving. That's just kind of where I'm at with it.
I don't think you can go wrong with drafting a wide receiver from Ohio State or LSU. I mean, it's proven. You can't. I mean, like I always tell my brother, you started.
Don't leave USC out of that conversation.
Yeah.
How dare you, sir?
Yes, I am.
No,
How dare you, sir?
If you're a starting wide receiver at Ohio State, you can start at any college in the country, and that's just the way it is. But in the past decade, how many receivers have they produced, and they run the same system over and over and over again, and it's tried and true in the NFL. It's translated there, and LSU is doing the same thing with their receivers.
No, I get it, and I'll say again, so is USC. But I get it. That's another thing that gives me pause on Egbuka, though, is because I think that people are thinking of that mindset of people are like, oh, he's another Ohio State. I don't see him. He's not on the same level as the guys that have come out before him. And so I think people are just saying like, oh, this is another Ohio State wide receiver. He's got to succeed. Like, this is what they do. They produce great wide receivers. He's got to succeed. And I think people are overrating him because of that. And I don't see, he's definitely, even if he's a little bit, even if he's better than I believe he is.
He was my other convince me player.
Yeah, even if he's better than I believe he is, like he's not the level of these other wide receivers out of Ohio State that came out before him, like the Jackson Smith and Jigba, the Garrett Wilson.
From playing across from them.
And that's the thing. He benefited from playing across from these guys, not having to play against number one corners in college. I mean, not even this year when he was, hey, this is your turn. You're supposed to be the best. And here comes this freshman who's way outside him. Now I get Jeremiah Smith is
the guy.
Insane.
He is him.
Insane.
He's the guy.
I get that. But still, he's always had these great receivers that are around him that are taking attention away from him, taking the defensive looking away from him. I'm sorry, when you line up and you're defense coordinator, you're not saying, okay, I can't have Igbuka beat me. We can't have him beat us. Man, it's always another wide receiver.
I think he is the best route runner in this class. Right. And I think that's an important factor.
Yeah.
Right. And look, I agree. He's not going to be that guy. He's not going to be the guy who's like, I've brought him up, Jamar Chase. He's not Jamar Chase, right? Like, we know that. But I do think that dude runs such incredible routes that I think that alone elevates his status higher than what we normally see out of wide receivers. He's going to get open. And straight and simple, I want a wide receiver who's going to get open. Because we saw, like, the Cowboys, right? We know their struggles with separation. We know that one guy runs routes. Everybody else is kind of like, man, maybe? You know what I mean?
No.
But like, a guy like Igbuka or even Burden, right? I like Burden for the same reason. I think their routes are so great that they can create enough space where you're hitting him for 7 yards and thinking, man, he can pick up 3. You know what I mean? Like, he can pick up my 3 for me. So while I agree in some aspects of this, I think route running is so important now. And that's kind of why I was saying, like, this era of football, route running and separation, man, if I can find that, give me that. Give me a guy who will sit in the middle of a zone between a safety and a corner and maybe a linebacker, find that pocket and know how to work that pocket, get leverage to that pocket, stack the safety and the corner into that pocket where he can catch and turn. Woo! You might have something there.
I'll say this I'll end the hot take with the hot take.
Oh, yeah.
His ceiling is Khalil Shakir. Good player, top 15 pick worthy? No.
Okay.
I don't like scouting helmets as much as the next guy. But there's just some schools that you do it for, like Notre Dame linebackers, Penn State edge rushers. You know, you could say USC quarterbacks, I guess, but it's just wide receiver you know. So
okay. So I'm gonna go to my hot take, but I am gonna just point out one thing, that one of us has a school that actually is the only school that had a wide receiver drafted in the first, second, and third. Just to leave it at that. We'll leave y'all with that little tidbit. Anyways, so my hot take, and because I'm so not enamored with this quarterback class, is that the most athletic, the smartest, and the most coachable quarterback in this class was not in a P4 school. He wasn't. Massey, who was he?
I don't remember who you said. I'm sorry. I apologize.
If I say Tommy, what do you say?
Oh, Tommy Touchdown. That's right.
There we go.
Tommy Touchdown.
Yep, Tommy Lowe from Montana State University, guys. This guy is the most athletic quarterback in this class. 4.3 40, 39 vertical. He had 2,400 or 2,474 in rushing, 29 touchdowns in rushing, passing 31 touchdowns at 67.8%. With only 2 interceptions in that time in 2024. This kid is a 4.0 student at the engineering department that I actually know a little bit about because my father and my grandfather graduated from the engineering department at Montana State. But this kid is, to me, completely overlooked. And of the quarterbacks in this class, he's the one that just needs a little time to adjust to the speed of the NFL, and someone is going to steal him and sit him on and coach him in, and he could come in and be better than any of the rest. Just throwing that out there. That's my hot take.
I don't hate the take. I think the question is with guys like that, and I like the guy. I do. I think he's better than a 7th round pick, which is where he's projected now. I think 5th, 4th round is kind of where he fits. I think the level of competition has to be a question. Right. And it's not a knock on him. It's just where he ended up playing football. You have to question that level of competition. Now, could he do it, as we watch the combine and the pro days, and will he climb up? I think you're right. I think that dude's going to be better than most people think. But level of competition is always a concern to NFL teams. We know that. We've seen it. There's been guys that we've been like, man, this guy's pretty good. And you're like, yeah, but he's D2, and we all kind of brush it aside as, oh, you played for a D2 team. While you were great there, it may not translate. I think that's kind of the one knock on him is how is he going to compare? And we've all talked it, right? A USC linebacker. That is a completely different state than a D2 linebacker, right? Like, I think we all agree on that. Just a totally different player, right? Different caliber, different most of the time. Not saying all the time. But yeah, man, I agree with you. I think he's going to be better than people think. But he's going to have to sit and learn and watch and kind of step that level of competition up.
I just think that if he had been at a D1 school, we'd be talking about him very much so with
if he did what he did at a D1 school, 100%.
Easily.
Yeah.
Agree. We would be talking about him in this draft up there with these guys.
Agree. Yeah. If he was at, South Carolina, we're talking about him higher, right? Like if he's at Rutgers, even, I think you were talking about him higher. I just think not being in a D1 is why his draft stock was pushed down a little bit.
Right. No, I agree. I had to throw a little spice out.
I love it. No, that's a great one. I really like the kid. I am 100% on board with the kid. I just think he's going to need a little time.
He needs to develop. He's right now, in my opinion, he's more athlete than he is quarterback. And once he starts developing, hopefully more as a quarterback, if he can do that, then he could surprise some folks. But he, like you said, he's a tremendous athlete. Tremendous.
Yeah. Super smart. And I guess, he made the freaks list. And basically, I think they said something about him. He is the guy that you want your daughter to date. He is that kid. That's how good of a human he actually is. So and we can't say that about all of them.
No, he's done now. Like 7th rounder. I don't need people to date my daughters.
That right? Exactly.
Yeah, I don't need any.
Yeah,
we're good.
My daughters are 9 and 5. Let's. If he's trying to date my daughters, there's some serious issues going on.
Well, guys, you know what? We've already hit the hour-and-a-half mark. We are planning on doing this again next week. I'm going to suggest that we're going to do this on Thursday to keep your wives happy, because I hope you all remember what next Friday is.
The industrial holiday.
Yes, the made-up holiday that
Hallmark,
you still
baby.
need to. The Hallmark holiday that you're going to have to be nice to your wives and everything. And I'm actually flying out to Daytona for the Daytona 500 because that is my idea of a perfect Valentine's Day. But
my wife grew up in Kansas City, which is, if people didn't know, is absolute home of Hallmark, right? Like their
I did not know
headquarters is
that.
there. They were created in Kansas City. My wife hates Valentine's Day. She calls it a Hallmark holiday. So like whenever I'm like, oh, let's do something for Valentine's Day, my wife's like, no. So you know what?
You get a pass on this
Friday.
one.
I'm good. I'm good either way.
Yeah, well, we will try and see what our Thursday schedule is, just because I'm telling you right now, I have to leave for the airport at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning to get to Daytona. So
So we're doing a
do,
midnight show Friday night, right?
yeah, perfect.
Like a
Yes,
schedule
absolutely, absolutely. There's no issues with that. Your wives won't care whatsoever. But what we may be looking forward to is we may be doing like an entire first round draft. We will draft for everybody. We will get something great for everybody going on. But we really I appreciate all you guys. You know, I appreciate all of you every single day. And we appreciate everybody that's tuned in and listened in to us and, you know, what we had to babble on about the draft. I hope everybody has an amazing Super Bowl weekend. And we'll catch you all next week.
Hey, real quick. Let's go real quick. Round the horn. Just name your team.
Oh yeah, everybody. Yeah.
Like
what? Oh, name who you think's gonna win.
Yeah, name who you think's gonna win.
Well, the Chiefs.
Chiefs. Yeah, Chiefs.
I'm gonna say that's who I want to win. We're gonna put it that way. I need Barkley.
Chiefs. Sorry, Chiefs.
To like miss the bus and not show up to the stadium, stub his toe. I need Barkley.
Hey, there's a couple people apparently like Jalen Carter who got the flu right now.
Yes,
we'll
there's a bug going around in the Eagles locker room.
I did hear that. I did hear that there is some flu going around in there. So yep. Dude, she probably has money on it too. So she's going to Daytona with me. So
there we go.
Buy the drinks if she wins.
Chiefs. Yeah, Chiefs. I got the Chiefs.
All right. You know what? Before we do go, I should have actually had you guys do this. Tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter or social media. Tyler, go ahead.
You can find me on Twitter at CrypticGhost2.
And don't forget your show, man. Shout it out. Plug.
Oh, yeah. So, we're on the off season with LP, STQ Flight Crew, LP Crews. We do the Freshman 15 podcast during college football season. Go and check it out.
Yeah, you guys make sure because they do some amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. Tyler and LP kill it on that show. Dan.
So I am Dan _Rupert, RUPPERT, just like the former Yankees owner. I'm not a Yankees fan, but I have to do it. So you can find me there. And then this year, I will again be hosting the Wounded Warrior Project draft for the first 2 rounds. We're going to cover the first 2 rounds this year. So if you're chilling, Twitch, Wounded Warrior Project, got to shout us out a little bit. We also do talks on Monday. We do tabletop on Tuesday. We do conversations on Friday. But we're going to be covering the draft rounds 1 and 2 this year. So that's what I'll be doing for the draft.
Reed, tell us where we can find all your goodness.
You can find me on OnlyFans at September Fun. No.
Only stands.
Find me at Cowboys Wire. I'm a daily contributor there. And then you can find my Twitter and whatnot from there.
Absolutely. For me, just right here at DJA Massey on Twitter. You can find me, and you can also find me and Cam. Sorry, Cam, I'll jump the gun, but you can find me and Cam on Starstruck during the season for Cowboys content.
And yep, like Massey said, there definitely on Starstruck, on Twitter at TOO_MuchCamber. And you can also catch me pretty much daily on the Huskies Wire. They're reporting for the University of Washington Huskies sports. In fact, I got to write an article about softball team after this, so and the grind never stops.
Had to do the Canberra thing.
Yeah, too much camber. it's never a good thing when that tire goes. There's too much camber. But like I said earlier, I hope everybody enjoys this Super Bowl weekend, and we and go commercials.
Yeah, go commercials.
But we'll catch you all next week. Thank you, everybody.